As you probably know, our league, and as well as the state and U.S. league, are nonpartisan. That means we do not support any particular candidate for election. Our mission is to engage you, the voter, by giving all candidates for a given office a public space to answer questions in a structured way while maintaining civil discourse. Please, if you'd like to join our league, you can just go on to our website, LWV of PWM, and join up there. Or if you would like to, you can give me your name and email address at the end of this presentation. Remember, the league is not for women only, so we look forward to everyone joining. This evening, we're going to be taping the event, and the tape recorder is over there. It's Judy's cell phone. She does a beautiful job with her camera on it to tape the event, and we will get it up on our website, YouTube, and then you just look up LWV and PWM when you get onto it. When you ask a question, you will not be on film, but your voice will be heard. The mic that you ask questions from is in the middle of the floor, and we have someone from our league manning the mic. We ask that your questions be limited to about a minute so that the candidate can hear the question and answer them. Please don't, explain the reason for the question, etc., because sometimes that does take longer than a minute. We found from personal experience. We hope you'll consider joining our league. We look forward to having this conversation with our candidates for Port Washington Water District. And I'm going to turn it over now to our moderator for this evening, Ren Bethany from the League of Women Voters in Central Nassau. So she will be reading the instructions for the evening. Thank you.
Good evening. As Regina said, my name is Ren Bethany, a name I've explained for many years. Ren is my first name, Bethany is my last name, and I am the moderator. For over a century, the League of Women Voters has sought to make democracy work by holding events like this, so voters like you can hear the views and observe the behavior of candidates on a range of issues relevant to this community. This is why we ensure that all candidates agree to the debate procedures. Further, by being here tonight, you, as the audience, have also agreed, as noted on the large posters. The League has used procedures like these for over 60 years to ensure fair process and encourage civil discourse. What I'm about to tell you, will take about 3 minutes, so please bear with me. As moderator, I'm the arbitrator of all decisions during the debate, and I'm going to lay out the expectations for you. Citizenship requires both knowledge and civic engagement. The responsibility of maintaining good government rests on the shoulders of citizens, that is, on everyone here, so we have expectations for you. Please be sure your cell phones are turned off or silenced. Take a minute and do that right now. And please do not block the doors or the camera. Your purpose is to hear from candidates, so let's focus on their voices, not yours. Please remain seated and silent during the Q&A. As moderator, I will stop the debate if the audience interrupts. Interruptions reduce the time for candidates to speak, and we're here to listen to them. To repeat, League policy permits only authorized recordings of these forums. Taking clips or segments is not authorized. And we all do that. We take clips or segments, but in this forum, that's not authorized. The League is recording this forum, as Regina explained, and we'll post it on our League of Women Voters of PWM YouTube channel this week before the December 10th election. Any audience member who violates the agreed procedures for the forum or disrupts the forum by ignoring these audience expectations after being warned may be asked to leave. We thank you all for being here to learn more from each of the candidates who seek to represent you. When the candidates arrived, they drew straws for speaking order. Mr. Idle will be first, Mr. Brackett will be second, Mr. Gibbons will be third. I'll now ask the audience to applaud briefly after each candidate's opening statement, and after that, to hold all applause and other responses until after all the questions have been asked and answered and after their closing statements have been made. So, Mr. Idle, please. If you will begin with your opening statement.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Charles Idle, and I'd like to thank each and every one of you for being here tonight. A special thanks to the Port Washington-Manhasset League of Women Voters and the Port Washington Library for hosting this event. I am confident that I am the ideal candidate for this position of Port Washington Water Commissioner Chairman. With 24 years of experience as a CEO and entrepreneur, I bring a proven track record of executive management, leadership, and vision. Experience does matter. As the CEO of a consulting tech firm and a former vice president of technology in the private sector, I have successfully overseen many multi-million-dollar large-scale projects. My extensive experience has equipped me with a broad and transferable set of skills, including budgeting, contract and facilities management, human resources, labor negotiation, project management, system design, and strategic planning. If elected, I am committed to working collaboratively and supportively with the architects, engineers, commissioners, superintendent, and office manager to ensure projects progress efficiently and successfully, including key components of the balanced budget, water cost affordability, infrastructures maintained successfully, and the MCL, MRDL, PFAS, 1,4-dioxide levels are all monitored and met. I am well acquainted with the current projects underway to address aging infrastructure and MCL contaminants of 1,4-dioxide, PFAS, and VOC with new AOP, GAC, and PTAS. I am well equipped to lead these initiatives. If elected, one of my priorities will be to reduce electric costs with renewable energy. Electricity represents a significant portion of the Port Washington Water District's budget. By investing in renewable energy solutions, we can mitigate these rising costs and ensure more affordable and environmentally friendly solutions. If elected, I will prioritize implementing real-time water monitoring through advanced RFID or Wi-Fi tools to promote conservation. Imagine being able to track your water usage instantly and daily like I do on my phone. I am a proud supporter of various civic organizations in town, and I am a Port Washington Chamber of Commerce board member. I am an award-winning environmentalist with a deep commitment to sustainability and public service. As a co-founder of the Port Washington Citizen Scientist Program, I exemplify this dedication by teaching hydrology and inspiring others to engage in environmental water stewardship. This education on critical topics such as contaminants, our aquifer, and the impacts of saltwater intrusion. I empower the community to protect and preserve our vital water resources. As your water commissioner, I will ensure that I dedicate this position, and I am ready to serve the community effectively.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I am Port Washington Water District Chairman David Brackett, and I am seeking re-election to the District Board of Commissioners. I am running again for two reasons. First, I have the knowledge and experience necessary to manage our district's complex infrastructure, and I believe I continue to do a great deal for my community. The second is that despite all my years on the district board, my passion for and protecting our water and the public health of this wonderful community is as strong as ever. I have served the Port Washington community as a district commissioner since 1992 and have seen just about everything the water industry has to offer. I have worked alongside my fellow board members, engineers, and elected officials. I am a member of the Long Island Water Conference, the Western Nassau Aquifer Committee, and I'm a past president of the Nassau-Suffolk Water Commissioners Association. Decades of collaboration help ensure that our community's water supply can overcome any obstacle put in front of us. Alongside my fellow commissioners, I helped launch a smart controller rebate program and the district's pharmaceutical take-back day event. I have also promoted several public education campaigns, spoken about our water with students in the Port Washington schools, and hosted a number of events for residents to ask questions. My fellow commissioners and I have guided the district through arguably the most challenging years in its 100-year history as we deal with the threats of emerging contaminants. We have secured $37 million in grant funding for the installation of new treatment systems that will help keep our water at the highest quality possible while mitigating the cost it has on our residents' wallets. Our success in this area is something of which we are truly proud, and I hope you will allow me to continue this work. Serving the Port Washington community as Water District Commissioner has been one of the great honors of my life, and I humbly ask for the residents of our beloved community to allow me to continue my service. If you re-elect me on December 10th, I will continue to work hard to make your vote count and ensure that you all have the high quality of water service that you deserve. In closing, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this program. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for not only for tonight, but protecting our democracy. Tonight reminds me of when I first met my wife. We were young, we were in college, we were having the time of our lives. Ironically, it was the same year Dave Brackett became Water Commissioner. Commissioner Brackett has been in office for 32 years, and he still wants more. Meanwhile, the overwhelming majority of residents all want term limits to ensure a fresh perspective and accountability. I know why Commissioner Brackett wants to stay in office. He's been leading this district for quite some time. Some could consider it his baby. I can't list all the infrastructure projects that Commissioner Brackett has been involved with, but I can assure everybody here it is an impressive list. Commissioner Brackett and Port Washington Water District are currently involved in several infrastructure projects. The Morley AOP, the newest electrical improvements, the Stonytown AOP, and the water main improvement program, just to list a few. There's also an aggressive amount of projects on tap for 2025 to 2029. Commissioner Brackett and I know the importance of these projects, not only to protect our water delivery system, but it's imperative for clean, safe drinking water throughout our town. I can assure Commissioner Brackett and all of Port Washington that the next generation will be able to continue his great work. However, the financial burden of clean, dependable drinking water is on us, our residents, and our taxpayers. The 2023 adopted budget has an estimated revenue of $5.2 million raised by taxation, and an additional $5.2 million raised by metered sales, and an additional $2.3 million raised by taxation. Then we have over $100 million in bonds over the last 5 years to be paid back by us, the taxpayers. How much does our water really cost us? Unfortunately, unlike electric and gas, many residents take water for granted. One of the reasons is because your electric and gas bills are not supplemented by taxes. That's why we need to step up our conservation efforts. I'd like to expand the existing conservation efforts in our schools by making sure that every child learns about conservation. We have to spread the message of conservation to all of our children at an early age. I do not think education should end with our children. Adults should always be reminded of how precious our water is. Everybody should have a constant reminder to conserve water. I would like to take the district's online bill pay to the next level. I'd like to see a true click and pay system and eliminate the extra fees associated with the existing system. As commissioner, I would like to make a transparent district more transparent and reinvent the wheel when it comes to the way people of Port Washington think about conservation.
We will now begin with your questions. I remind you to please hold any applause until the end of the forum. We have assembled to hear from the citizens, from the candidates, rather than from fellow citizens. When you wish to speak, simply come up to the mic. Introduce yourself and ask your question. And again, please make sure the question is stated in a minute or so. Don't make it lengthy. You don't need to explain why you're asking it. You just need to ask, and these gentlemen will take turns. And who starts to answer first is rotated among them with each question. So if you have a question, please come right on up to the mic. I remind you that you will not be seen. You will be heard, but you won't be seen because the camera is set to focus on the candidates.
I have a question. I'm Amy Bass from Port Washington. Across from the North Hempstead Country Club on Stonytown Road, there's a new water, some kind of facility that's being built. Is that something that our water district is doing?
Yes, it's a water treatment system where we are integrating an existing activated carbon filtration system with a nitrate removal system and an advanced oxidation process system. The AOP system is designed to remove PFAS and 1,4-dioxane. The nitrate system removes nitrate from water, and the carbon filter removes lighter organic contaminants from the water. All of those problems are existing at the well on Stonytown Road.
There's already a well there.
There is a well there.
Okay, so my question is, there was a well there, and you're renovating the well, is that? my
Okay,
question-
and it's one question that goes to all three candidates.
Okay,
Yes, so.
the question is the status of that well. What is that project? As a resident who drives by Northern Boulevard, Port Boulevard and Stonytown Road, I see this structure going up, and I'm not sure what is it, so that's my question.
It is the existing Stonytown well, and then they're taking down the building, and they're adding all new advanced processes through it. There'll be an AOP system, then it'll run through a GAC system as well. So it's a whole new system that's going in on Stonytown Road. There have been some delays because Stalco construction hasn't gotten there as much as they should have, but the delays will get done, and they'll get the project done as soon as possible.
If Mr. Idle would care to add anything, you're welcome to.
Both answers are correct. I'm going to add to that my original statement, my opening statement. All these new systems that are going up are going to create the need for more electricity. We've got a $9 million budget where $1.2 million are going right into electrical costs. That's why I said before, even in Stonytown or Christopher Moore, I've been arguing this point, I'm going to continue to argue. We've got rooftop, we've got land. We need to do something to reduce the electrical costs. We need to have these systems go up. I'm in complete agreement. We need the AOP and the GAC systems to be in there, but we need them because the old systems didn't work. But on the same hand, we're watching these electrical costs go up, and to what Mr. Gibbons said, it's going right into our bottom line for the cost of what the taxpayer is paying.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
You have asked a question. We ask you to hold any further questions until all other people that wish to ask one can do so. Question number 2 will be answered in this order. First, Mr. Gibbons, then Mr. Idle, then Mr. Brackett. Would someone please approach the mic if you have a question?
My name is Donna Quinn, and I live almost across the street from where the new well is going in. And originally, I didn't know. You know, I was like, this is like very unusual. So I'm glad to hear the explanations about why it was needed and everything else that these gentlemen have been giving us. My question is, why has the price of water gone up 4 times?
Mr. Gibbons.
I think that's real easy. Everything has gone up in the last 4 or 5 years. Look, the cost of construction material that we're using, the cost of everything, cost of food is going up. Everything goes up. The cost of producing and generating water, all the other costs. As Chuck was talking, the price of the electricity running, it's gonna go up almost $200,000 from last year to this year.
Well, I understand that, but I would assume that there have been built in ahead of time things that will ameliorate that. If we know that things are going up, you know?
I understand that, but nobody expected the pandemic to happen.
Okay, I need to continue with the procedure of allowing each candidate to answer before you segue.
Okay.
And so we would like to hear from Mr. Idle.
Sticking with my first statement, $1.2 million, we've got to get the cost of electricity down which is a huge number on the $9 million budget. The cost of GAC and other, carbon and other things that they're paying for has gone up. I do not know what they're doing for buying the shared services, but I do want to look into seeing if they're getting advantage for buying their carbon filters and so forth in bulk or something to drive those costs down. But I can only tell you, as Mr. Gibbons stated, looking 2023 to 2024, that electric cost has gone up significantly. And I'm anticipating, honestly, we're at 1.2, we could be at 1.5 very soon. We get all these plants fired up, and we've got all these motors running, these numbers are gonna be tremendous. And I think solar is definitely an answer.
Thank you.
Mr. Brackett?
Yes, to answer your question, first of all, the Stonytown Well Number 10 station is costing $14.1 million. The Hewlett Well 4 station has costed $5.7 million. Our water main replacement project is costing $12 million. The Morley Park wells 8, 9, and 10, from which we get, 8, 9, and 11, from which we get 2/3 of our water in Port Washington, is costing $21.3 million. And our newest 1, 2, and 3 well rehabs are costing $5.5 million. That is the reason, and I also mentioned that we have received $37 million in grant money to help offset that. We are very, very active in pursuing grant money, and we will continue to do so. And to the extent we get grant money, it will lower the cost of those projects. We do act cooperatively with a lot of districts to buy things like carbon to get a better price. And we have looked into solar electric. We looked at solar electric for our biggest open field, and we're told that it was not economically feasible. We have very few. I stop.
Thank you, Mr. Brackett. For question number 3, Mr. Idle, Mr. Brackett, and Mr. Gibbons will go in that order. May we please have whoever has the third question, please come to the mic.
Hello, my name is Marlene Munnelly. I have a question involving the recent bond issue approval that the town council gave for a $60 million bond to be issued by the water district. I had asked at the town council meeting, and I did not, nobody was able to answer the question. My question to you is, an understanding that you cannot pinpoint the interest rate until borrowing is done, but can anyone offer a total amount that bond will cost the taxpayers when all is said and done after what is, I presume, a 30-year issue. So, in other words, not the cost to any particular theoretical house, but the overall price that that $60 million bond issue will ultimately cost the taxpayers.
I think that's gonna depend on how many grants that they get. I know they're working with WIA and the bipartisan law that's in place to get more grants. And I know that they are doing a fantastic job at that. But whether they can get enough grants to cover the entire amount is to be determined. If it doesn't, of course, the taxpayer would pay the difference. And no, I do not actually know the interest rate that's on that bond. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, what you're saying is that the district may not issue the full $60 million that was approved?
Well, the district would, my understanding is the bond is there, but the district is only gonna use what it needs from the bond. They may not use the entire bond. They got a bond of $60 million.
Right.
I mean, as they go through the process of the project, and this is hypothetical, they might use 50 of the 60. And so there's a portion left over. Of that portion that's left over, if again, there's grants given by WIA and others that would cover that, there'd be some portion that in theory is not covered. They have just recently announced they got another, I think it was $10 million to cover one of the projects.
We have not borrowed $60 million.
Understood.
We have only received authorization to issue $60 million worth of bonding to cover the actual cost of projects, less the grants that we receive. We do not pay interest on the bond money until we draw it from the town. So as the projects are completed, we will ask the town for the amount of money that we need to pay for those projects. And any amounts that we ask for will be reduced by the amount of the grants. And the interest rate that we will be charged will be the prevailing rate whenever the town of North Hempstead decides to go out and sell serial bonds.
Okay, one of the reasons why we have the bonds coming out is for the 2025 to 29 capital plan project, which has many planned projects going on. Sandy Hollow has some work being done on it. Newlist has work being done on it. Hewlett Station, we've already discussed that one. Bar Beach Station, it has a PFAS treatment plant going in, goes on and on. The prevailing rate of an interest rate is we're kind of held hostage by the banks and such, but if you look at $100 million, and let's say it's a 20-year bond, and it's basically going to come out to $5 million a year just in principal. We don't know what the taxes and what it's going to be. Also, when you get a bond, the bond says not to exceed $60 million. So that's.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbons. I'm going to ask you to give me just a moment because I need to keep track of time and I left my cell phone in my case. So just a second.
I believe it's 7:30.
Yes.
I'm supposed to know that.
You could use the clock in the back if you can see it. Ren?
Oh, here it is.
See the clock?
Good point. There's a clock back there.
This is a good room. Not all rooms have clocks.
Comedy for the night. But yes, 7:35 is what I have. That is a bit ahead of that clock. Okay. May we please have question 4, which will be answered firstly by Mr. Brackett, next by Mr. Gibbons, and thirdly by Mr. Idle.
Good evening, I'm Paul Berkelson, 40-year resident of Fort Washington.
I'm sorry, we're going to adjust the mic so, because you're not getting picked up by it.
It's because I'm very tall.
Yeah.
So we see in the news all of these extreme weather events. We've been spared to some degree, although we had drought recently. And it seems that these events are not predictable because they're so extreme, they're unprecedented. So my question is, what is the potential impact? And I think that here, based on what we know, these would be extreme storms, wind and rain. What's the risk to our water supply system? What measures have been taken or need to be taken to address this risk and build resilience into the system? And is that also taken into account in budgeting for current projects and future projects?
Mr. Brackett.
The threat to our water system as a result of climate change is really mainly because of sea level rise. The way the hydrogeology works is that if the sea level rises, it puts pressure on the fresh water and causes the interface between the fresh water and salt water to move, which can potentially contaminate our wells with salt water. That is why, for the past 30 years, the Water District has been funding a study by the USGS to study the aquifer under Port Washington and determine what effect our current pumping will have on the moving of that saltwater interface. The district was very, very forward-thinking more than 30 years ago when it built 3 wells in Christopher Morley Park, because those 3 wells, which provide 2/3 of our water, are not as impactful on saltwater intrusion as the wells that are on the peninsula.
Thank you. Mr. Gibbons, oh, yeah.
Our climate has obviously been changing, and now we're getting 100-year storms almost every year. Okay? One of the things we have to worry about is that over all the years, all of the industry around our town has been dumping pollutants into the ground. And we're not just talking the major Ikinson Steel and Typhon Steel, the sand pits, everything like that. Every little gas station, mom and pop gas station, back in the day in the 50s and the 60s, they would take the oil, they would throw it right into the ground. Now, with all these heavy rains, every drop of water that lands on our ground is going to go down into our aquifer, and it's going to bring some contaminants with it. And the more and more and more rain that we have in the future that we have, there are more contaminants in the ground that haven't even slightly reached our aquifers yet. And that's what we have to worry about with all these rains and storms. It saturates the ground, and it's going to pull all the contaminants down into it. I think that's the biggest concern about it. I don't know about the seawater raising because we're getting a lot of rain. I do understand that when we pull more, we're going to pull the salt water up through, but I think the biggest concern is the contaminants getting washed back down into our aquifers.
I'm out every week working with the Port Washington Citizen Scientist Program. We are literally out testing the ponds that are there. We test for total dissolved solids, ammonia, pH levels, and everything else. We're looking at that because everything that's there does eventually or could go into the aquifer. Secondly, it's my point on my opening speech, we also need to teach and give the tools to residents about being mindful of how much water they are using to help in the process, because the more we draw, the more likelihood we will impact the saltwater intrusion. It's a combination of working with the community and what the Port Washington Water District draws. It's one, we're a community that we're all impacted by the same sets of issues.
Thank you. Question number 5, Mr. Gibbons will start, Mr. Idle will be next, and then Mr. Brackett. Who would like to pose question number 5?
I noticed that there's a lot of work being done. The road on Longview Road, which is where I live, has been dug up several times because they seem to have been replacing pipes with the water drainage and so on. And they completed it, they filled up the road, and I think there was a fire pump that must have been leaking into the well as well. So I'd kind of like to know how you detect this, because it was detected very quickly by the water department. And do you see that this will be a continuing problem throughout Port Washington, having to dig up the streets and replace these water mains and so on that travel down our roads?
I'm sorry, Mr. Gibbons.
Okay. There is a water main improvement project going on right now, and it's all over town. It's up by Longview, it's in Soundview, it's in the park section. We have to take care of our infrastructure to be able to keep our water delivery system safe. It's construction, we need to keep going. They find the leaks very quickly, they can do that, and they will happen over time. But with the infrastructure improvements on the water mains, it's gonna lower the amount of water main breaks that happen, especially in wintertime. That's when they happen a lot. That's what they're being proactive about, replacing these lines now, instead of having water main breaks, constant major water main breaks. We've all seen them in town, big sinkholes around, big traffic delays and everything like that. They're being proactive about it by replacing these mains now, so we don't have a bigger problem. So we might have to deal with a couple of small problems during construction, which we always have, but in the long view, it's gonna save us all the water main breaks. It's gonna bring our system up to 2024.
Thank you. Mr. Idle?
I think you asked two questions. One is, I agree that there's a water main project going on, moving from 4-inch to 8-inch pipes. That's one part. The second part of your question was about leaks, and I believe it was just at the last meeting they approved a company to come in that does leak detection, and will go out. They're going to cover half of the area this year, and then half next year. So they'll have an ongoing program to detect leaks.
Thank you. Mr. Brackett?
Well, I'd like to thank Mr. Gibbons for praising our water main replacement project. And I'd like to thank Mr. Idle for telling you that we approved a contractor to do a scoping of half of our water mains during this coming winter. And we hope to find leaks, not only for not having the inconvenience of having to deal with leaks, but also not to waste water. So those are the two major projects that we are involved in to replace and stop water loss. I believe your question was about a hydrant?
Yes, the hydrant, it turned out that they had to, it was leaking, I guess, and they had to find out where it was leaking from, and sure enough, it was the hydrant.
Well, we do have equipment that monitors the sound that helps us pinpoint where the leak is actually taking place.
Thank you. Question number 6 will once again be in 1, 2, 3 order. Mr. Idle, Mr. Brackett, Mr. Gibbons. So who has a question? If there is no one, then we will return to the First Lady, who seemed to have more to ask.
Back to the facility, the new facility on Stonytown Road and Port Boulevard. Was there an architect who designed that facility?
I was not there for the architecture, but I know posted there is a architectural drawing of what the final project will look like. It will not be just the tanks that are standing there now. There will be a housing project, but I'm pretty sure that it'll fit with the community, because I know that I'm sitting in on the meetings, and I've sat in on the last over a year now. They're working hard, and I give them credit for that. They're working hard to make sure that everything, the trees, and the backup engines that emergency engines that they might use, are going to fit, and I'm sure that the architecture will be fine.
Mr. Brackett?
We used the Verga and Bartolucci architects and engineers to design that project. They did it with our help and our input, and our input to any design of a project is that if we won't live next to it, we won't build it. If you look up, sometime go up the end of Bar Beach Road and look at the Back Tower aeration treatment facility that we built right at the end. It looks like a little New England home. And I was up there one time, and one of the neighbors walked by and started praising it and wanted to know if he could rent it. It's really that beautiful. And like
Okay, well,
I said,
that's reassuring. As a resident who drives by, I'm happy to know this. Thank you.
Mr. Gibbons, if you wish to add.
Sure, every single infrastructure project that the district does, They want to build something that is aesthetically pleasing and fits into the neighborhood. So if you look at Mr. Commissioner Brackett mentioned up in the park section, all these buildings are being made to fit into whatever neighborhood they're in. They don't want to make a white elephant on the block. They want everything to fit in. Sort of like Christopher Morley came out beautiful. They have extra accents on it that they didn't have to pay for, but it fits into our town. Same with over on by you. It's going to be a beautiful building when it's done. You can come to the meeting. I'm sure they'll show you what it's going to look like, but it's going to show you it's going to fit in. Also, with the Stony Town, it was very difficult for them to fit all the mechanics into this building because it was a very small piece of property. They had those challenging aspects to be able to overcome, and they've done that. And with doing that, they also can keep the project looking aesthetically pleasing to all the surrounding homes. They will.
This is a very sensitive mic. I put down my glasses case, so I beg your pardon for any extraneous sounds. For question number 7, it would start with Mr. Brackett, go to Mr. Gibbons, and finish with Mr. Idle. Do we have a 7th question? I'm just going to be patient and wait for a minute because it does happen that somebody that wasn't intending to ask actually has a question that arises as you think about it.
You can stand. Hi, I'm Jeff Stone, and I live in Manhasset. I have a section of Manor Haven. And infrastructure is a big deal. It's outdated. I'm glad you're addressing it. I just hope maybe all these projects didn't happen at the same time. Maybe spread them out as the need arose, at the time. And why all of a sudden all these projects now are happening when they could have been spaced out. I mean, I don't understand that. I have a 2-part question, so.
Well, let's get the first part answered, and and then if no one else.
So how did all these projects come on board at the same time? That's what it seems like I'm hearing. I may be wrong.
Mr. Brackett.
Well, we do, on a regular basis, assess our infrastructure needs, our normal infrastructure needs. And we did replace the water mains on Manhasset Isle. I was probably dating myself, but probably 15 years ago. And that would have just been a part of like a 5-year plan. The reason why everything seems to be happening at once now is we have our normal 5-year plan infrastructure improvements along with the water treatment improvements that have been necessitated by the maximum contaminant levels of PFOA, PFOS, and warm dioxide. We have to comply on a relatively quick basis to the MCL levels on those. That's why Hewlett, Stony Town, Christopher Morley Park, and eventually Bar Beach Road, that's why all of those projects seem to be happening at once. We have a limited time in which to complete those projects.
Mr. Gibbons?
Commissioner Brackett might be able to correct me. I think in 2019 or through 2020, the Board of Health basically mandated Port Washington to fix all these problems with the water. We had the dioxin coming through. There's always going to be another emerging contaminant. But they came to the district and said, no, you have to change all, you have to put AOP treatment centers in, you have to put nitrates in it. They tell you where you have to. It's really not up to them. It has to be done. The water mains, we have to keep placing, we have to keep going. Just like every time we replace a bridge, everybody complains about the traffic, but we have to replace the bridges. We have to keep our infrastructure up for the next generation in town.
Mr. Idle.
I believe Mr. Gibbons stating what Mr. Gibbons said. It was actually 2020 that New York State lowered, and it really affected all of Long Island, and everyone who's got 1,4 dioxin problems, lowered the MCL to 1 part per billion. That set off a chain reaction to many of the water districts having to put in all new systems simultaneously, and in concert with the aging of other infrastructure facilities that I'm sure the Port Washington District had. The combination set off a series of multiple things happening all at once. Then you had just the daily run the engine issues of, as they stated, with water mains having to go from 4 to 8 inch infrastructure changes at that same time.
Yeah, thank you. The reason why I ask that, sometimes we have a tendency to push things down the road, and it happens so that it blows up in our face at that time. And I'm just, now I'm relieved in a way that things are being done as it happens, constant monitoring, and working on things that they're needed. But now, my second question is, with all the building that's going on,
Well, I'd just like to make sure that everybody's had a chance to ask a question first. So if there are no further questions, we'll go right on to your second question.
thank you, with all the building that's going on, in SIL, I mean, we have a 3-story being built in Minnetonka, 16 unit on Sagamore, 59 Orchard Beach. They're gonna be using a lot more water. You have a proposed 4-story building right here on Main Street. Who's gonna be using quite a bit of water, I would imagine. And I'm sure that's not the end of building here. While building keeps the town healthy, overbuilding can ruin it somewhat. So I don't know if you have any plans for excessive building or anything that's done that will maximize the usage of water.
Mr. Gibbons, please start.
Oh, sure, okay. As far as all the building, we can't stop the building. You have a lot going on in Manhasset Island. You have Eikenston Steel, you have Haven Marina, you have the property between Haven Marina and the Sportsman's Club. You have Typhon Steel that's eventually gonna go. And you have everything all over town. You have Inspiration Wharf that's gonna go. What I would like to see is all of the high-density housing that's being proposed here, that we can sort of implement some water-saving issues within that. Maybe capturing rainwater, irrigate their lawns, stuff like that. But I would like to impose some new codes for the high density. I don't know if we can do that necessarily for the single-family houses or the 2-family houses, but I know we can do something with the high-density buildings. They're using a lot of water and then also a lot of wastewater chip. So we can implement some new ideas and make that code for the new high-density building. Because I'm against high-density building. I think most of the people in Port Washington are against high-density building. But if we can make some good out of it and make some changes for the next generations through town, that these buildings aren't using as much money, they are using it. They're using water, they're using money, but they're not using as much water as they would have been in prior years. Thank you.
Mr. Idle?
I think the use of water in general needs to be monitored, including the buildings that they are putting up. We've talked about the 5 golf courses and leveraging gray water. I know that they're at least looking at that project. It's not just the buildings that they're building. I mean, the general pumpage is something that needs to, and it is. There's a pumpage report that comes out. They look at it consistently, and I know that again, areas like the golf course or these buildings that are going up, they're all of concern.
I want to thank all of you for answering the questions.
Mr. Brackett?
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
No problem.
Well, I want to tell you, first of all, that there's very little that the district can do concerning building that's going on in Port Washington.
Planning for it.
We're not a zoning authority. Town of North Hempstead approves what can be built, and then our responsibility is to give them water, which at some point in time is going to be a challenge.
Excuse me, Mr. Brackett, could I ask you to speak a little closer to the mic?
Okay. We have to give water to whatever it is the town of North Hempstead approves. At the moment, we evaluate every building project that comes in, not homes, but big projects, and evaluate those to see if we can, with our current infrastructure, provide water. So far, we have been able to provide water to all of those projects, but we realize that there will come a time when that will be a problem. We have advocated on the projects that we have looked at, large projects, we've requested no irrigation water. We've suggested rainwater recapture and other projects to help limit the amount of water that a large facility would use. But we are very, very sensitive to the increased water needs of development in Port
Well,
Washington.
anything you can do now to minimize the effect that multiple housing can do is great. You know, the question was, you answered it, the second part of it, and that is, we're going to think about what we can do when it happens. BZA is BZA, all right? They're their own country. So the thing is that we just have to take into account how much water they could use, and you just say that you'll measure it, you know, mathematically and see what's possible. But something else that is, what can be done? Conservation, projects, school education, and that's all well and fine. But keeping in mind, any building that does happen, is there a game plan? That's all and I think you answered it part. The game plan, that's really it. You can only build so much, and then everything falls apart. That's all
Thank
I'm
you, sir.
saying.
Thank you.
Comprehensive, so nobody will be scared.
Does anyone else have a question? Take your time, think a minute. Not a problem.
So I'm not a Port resident, I'm a Manhasset resident. But I've always been curious why there appear to be volume discounts rather than volume surcharges. Because while I realize that something like a golf course would say, what do you mean, we're not a household? Part of what one might want to do is make it more expensive to use more water rather than cheaper to use more water. Just curious.
Mr. Idle?
I'm unfamiliar with the discounting, if it's there, but related to the golf courses, they are one of the largest users of the water. As I stated before, I'm not exactly sure where we are on the gray water project, but anything we can do to leverage and lower the amount of water that the golf courses are using would be very helpful.
Mr. Brackett?
Well, with the exception of the Harbor Links golf course, most of the golf courses on the Port Washington Peninsula have their own wells and don't draw water from the public water supply. And even Harbor Links has been collecting its own water and uses very little water for irrigation from the Port Washington Water District. We give no discounts. In this district, we have tiered rates which cause you to have to pay more per cubic foot of water.
Please stay near the mic.
Oh, I'm
Thank you.
sorry. It causes you to have to pay more per cubic foot of water as your usage increases. I think we have 4 tiers of at right now, and the people on the 4th tier are paying substantially more for a cubic foot of water than people in tiers 1, 2, and 3.
Mr. Gibbons?
I was unaware of any volume discounts, and I thank Commissioner Brackett for straightening it all out. So, but one of the things I would like to discuss is the irrigation that we're using a lot. We could take some ideas from our neighbors up at Sands Point. They have 2 meters. They have 1 meter for their domestic water, and they have 1 meter for their irrigation. And their irrigation they pay more for. That would be a good step to go to help some conservation, lower the amount of water being used.
Thank you. Anybody else? If we're just very...
Okay, that was a fabulously interesting question to me, and I hope Port Washington thought it was interesting, that you actually do get surcharges for more volume, yes. But you just said that some places have their own well, and they use that water, it doesn't go through, presumably that water is not being treated the same way that Port Washington Water District treats its water. But my question would be, doesn't that well on private property also lower the aquifer? Does that not also pull water out of the aquifer, and aren't we pulling too much water out of the aquifer, and that's what's causing the saltwater intrusion? So should there be some regulation of all water coming out of the ground?
Mr. Brackett?
We are aware of the water that is being pumped at the private wells. We really have very little control over that. There seems to be a lot we don't have control over. But the Department of the DEC provides wells permits for those facilities to drill wells. They certainly have an effect on our aquifer and will affect the movement of our groundwater. But the movement of our groundwater that we are currently measuring will reflect those pumping from the wells that are private wells.
Mr. Gibbons,
It also depends on which aquifer they're pulling from.
you get a little bit closer to the end.
It depends on which aquifer they're pulling from too. A lot of these private wells are shallow wells. They're not going down into the deep. We have 3 aquifers. We're going to the middle aquifer right now. So they're pulling off of the first aquifer. It's not going to affect the saltwater intrusion as much. If they are pulling off the second aquifer, the proximity should not be that close to the saltwater. Sands Point does not allow you to drill private wells. I'm on a job right now, they want a private well for irrigation and they were declining because of their proximity to the saltwater, and it's going to help the saltwater intrusion. So as long as the properties are further away and they're going to the first aquifer, it's not going to affect our aquifer that we're at. And it's also the amount of water they're pulling out of the aquifer compared to the millions of gallons that we're pumping, also the district is pumping. It's not going to be much percentage-wise. That's the gallons that the private are pumping versus the gallons that the district is pumping.
Thank you. Mr. Idle?
I think your question is spot on. They're pumping, and they're pumping, it'll affect the aquifer. And I don't know which aquifer they're pumping from, but if they're pumping from the first or the Lloyd all the way down, it doesn't matter. They're pumping from aquifer, and it will affect it. Coming back to my original point is, I'm sorry I don't know the exact where we stand with the gray water, but I know gray water, the effort to look at using gray water from a Washington Water Pollution Control District would be a great project to be able to leverage that instead of drawing from the aquifers. I know that was underway, and there was some issues about reusing that water and it having, 1,4-dioxane and so forth in it, but nonetheless, it would be something we should be doing. And I know that from working in the Manhasset Bay Protection Committee, because that water is now being pumped, millions of gallons being pumped right back into Manhasset Bay when it could be leveraged to do something else with.
Thank you. Have we any more questions? One more from
No, that's okay.
our tall
Oh,
one.
you need to have the mic, otherwise it won't work.
Okay, no question, just thank you for your service to the community. Water is very important, and giving of yourselves to something as important as water quality is commendable. I think each one of you is to be applauded for your work on this, and your dedication and getting yourself well educated on what is at stake here, and what things need to be done, not just now, but down the road. So I just want to say thanks for the service.
Much appreciated. Thank you. It looks to me as though we are at the point of closing statements, and once again, they will be in order from Mr. Idle, Mr. Brackett, and then Mr. Gibbons. And again, please hold any applause until all are completed.
Not for closing, everybody applauds. You applaud each.
Oh, we applaud each.
Yes, every
By
single
my
one of these guys
instructions, and that
gets
was a little
applause.
fuzzy.
Okay.
So, I beg your pardon. As soon as Mr. Idle is completed, then you may freely applaud, and so forth.
Tonight, we've had the opportunity to discuss many critical topics related to the future of our drinking water. The challenges we face with water management are significant and ever-evolving. Environmental concerns such as saltwater intrusion, emerging contaminants, and the impacts of climate change require constant vigilance and proactive solutions. We must also address the practical day-to-day needs of our water infrastructure. I will ensure that all of the above are met. I am here tonight to state that I have the skills to manage the current and future construction projects. I simply state that I can do more and much more. I'm going to put my speech down. I'm here to tell you I'm out every week, and I work with the Port Washington group that is testing all the ponds, and we're working in Manhasset Bay. I'm very familiar with all of the things that are going on above the aquifer that can affect below the aquifer. I have that construction experience, I have the project management experience. I'm also offering you here tonight that I can get out, I can teach, I can be in the community. I'm doing that today, I can do it tomorrow, in addition to being a water commissioner and taking care of the projects that need to be taken care of. I have those skill sets, I have the knowledge, and I'm here to serve the community if you will put your trust in me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Brackett.
Move the mic closer. It's hard to fit 33 years of your life accomplishments into just one evening, let alone one set of remarks. In the interest of conciseness, I would like to leave you with a list of some of the things which I have accomplished alongside with my fellow board members, all of which I strive to continue in another term. We have relentlessly worked for long-term sustainability of our water resource through an active program of conservation and study of the Long Island aquifer. We have been champions of water quality and infrastructure needs to meet water quality standards, reduce waste, and prevent contamination. We have promoted transparency and public engagement through our community forums, our website, and our social media postings to keep the public aware of what's going on in their district. We are driving the use of water technologies by adopting smart water controllers and are adding to those capabilities of the systems through real-time remote water use monitoring and customer access to their account information. We have completed a water rate study which guarantees the economic viability of the district while equitably sharing the cost of the water supply to both our individual residents and businesses. We have been actively studying our aquifer for over 30 years to guarantee the sustainability of our sole source aquifer by assessing the risk of saltwater intrusion. These are just some of our accomplishments. I hope you will honor me with your vote on December 10th.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank everybody for being here tonight. As water commissioner, I would like to make a transparent district even more transparent. I'll be out in the community not only spreading the district's message, but listening to the 30,000 residents about their needs. I'll have the minutes updated every week instead of every 3 to 4 weeks, which they currently are, so our residents are more up to date. I'd like to see more detail in the minutes, so our residents can follow at home. For instance, there was a discussion in the minutes regarding a good interest rate from Chase Bank. It was discussed, everybody agreed it was a good interest rate. What was the interest rate? The interest rate should be in the minutes if you're discussing an interest rate. I'll enhance the notifications regarding New York State maximum contaminant limits and any relevant water quality updates to be more visual, to be more visible to the residents. I'll also work with the Board of Health to expedite these notifications for our residents in a timely fashion. I will reinvent the wheel when it comes to the way our residents think about conservation. I'd like to explore ways to make all new high-density housing more efficient. Educating our youth is the key to keeping conservation on the forefront. The promotion of conservation and sustainability at an early age will instill significance for a lifetime. We have to leave a better Port Washington to our future generations. It's time for the next generation water commissioner who is eager, passionate, and enthusiastic to continue Commissioner Brackett's great work. I'm Mark Gibbons, and I'm your next generation water commissioner. Thank you.
I wish to thank all of you for coming here. I wish to thank you for your thoughtful questions. I wish to thank the candidates for their obvious impressive knowledge of their topic and their responsibilities. As you leave tonight, please remember that the voting date is Tuesday, December 10th, at the Polish American Hall which is, just a moment, 5 Pulaski Place in Port Washington. So Tuesday, December 10th, Polish American Hall, 5 Pulaski Place, Port Washington, and the hours are noon to 9 p.m. I would also remind you that, not just you, but those of you here tonight and those who will watch on the League of Women Voters of Port Washington YouTube channel, once again, your questions, your attention, and your time have each made our community and our democracy stronger. Again, we thank the candidates and we thank the Port Washington Library for this lovely space. Don't forget, December 10th. The forum is now concluded.